Okay, this video is going to show us how to get started with GameMaker 8.1. The book that we're using for our class, we have a class Introduction to Video Game Design, and this will be our first video, and it begins with Lesson 3 in the workbook Introduction to Video Game Design, which you can purchase on Amazon for like $4.40. It's by Michael Plore. And if you're really interested in learning how to either teach Introduction to Video Game Design, or you're looking to learn how to create video games, this is really a great book for beginners. And this will be, like I said, this is Lesson 3. And what we'll do is we'll open GameMaker. So what you're going to want to do, I could probably click on it there, but you're going to want to search for GameMaker. And we're going to be using 8.1, and then you just click on the little icon to get it started. We have the light. We don't have to purchase anything. It's a free download. If you go on the internet, you can still look for it. I know GameMaker has GameMaker Studio 2 at this time, but you can still find free downloads of GameMaker 8.1. What you're going to want to do first is you're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to click on the advanced mode, okay, so that we have the advanced mode here. And we're going to be starting a new game. You'll see over here that we have our first tutorial, the Fruit Smash game, and I already have a video on YouTube if you'd like to go to that after this video and learn how to create the Fruit Smash game by going through this tutorial. I also have the scrolling shooter game, and I have a couple videos about this tutorial too. I'm making this game where you create airplanes, World War II airplanes. They scroll over and shoot each other as they come down. Both of these are in the tutorial section. If you look in the help, you can see you can find both the tutorials, and all the sprites come with this. So we're not going to do this right now, so we'll get rid of that. You can see here we have our quick shortcut icons. We have if you want to start a new game, which we will, or if you want to open an existing game, if you have any games, or after you save your first game, save the games, create standalone executables for your game, publish it to the internet, run a game. If you have a game, you're writing the code and you want to see if it works, you click on this to get it started. Over here we debug it, run it in debug mode. This is what we'll learn today, is how to create sprites. We'll also learn how to introduce sounds, creating backgrounds, create a path. We'll learn about that in other videos. Creating scripts, creating fonts, create a timeline, and creating objects we'll learn today also, and how to create a room we'll also learn. So those are most of the icons that we'll use. You can see that if you look, you can see these under resources, all these same icons that we have here with some other ones and different types of scripts, running the game, looking for tutorials, more tutorials, starting new, saving, publishing your game, importing resources, exporting them. So we're going to create a new game, which we have here. And one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to create a room. And we're starting Lesson 3 in our book called Introduction to Video Game Design by Michael Plore. And as we get started with GameMaker 8.1, the first thing that we're asked to do in the directions is to open up a room, create a room, go to backgrounds, and then click on the color palette, and we can design custom colors for our background. It asks us to use green. You could pretty much use any color you wanted, but just for you can change colors here. You can see these are the colors we can click on. We can use those. Add the custom color, and then it shows up here in these bars. All right, we can different hues, add custom color. So then we could save these colors if we want to use it at a different time. Not that it's much different than these two greens. I'll use this green, though, since I custom designed it myself. And here we set the background of this room as green. We can also bring in images, but we haven't brought in any images yet. And we can create foreground also, but we'll do that in later games, but we're not going to do that today. We can look at these grids. All right, we can turn them on or turn them off. They're set at 32 basically, but you can see that we can change the grid size, make them smaller, or make them larger, either horizontally or vertically. The book asks us to change it to 20 so that we can demonstrate how it's smaller than the 32 we were set at. By clicking on our toggle of showing the grid, we can turn it on or turn it off. The grid is still there. It's just whether or not you want to see it as you're doing it. When you create your game, this grid won't show up. It's there specifically for the design purposes. We can also make an isometric view, turn them 45 degrees. So this way, if we wanted to make more of like a 3D effect, we could do that. And we can zoom into the room, or zoom in or zoom out, or set it to equal, which would be the room that we have it. In the settings, you can see it asks us to call this room 0. So we just leave it as room 0 because that's what it's asking us to do. And it's also asking us to call this level 1. Level 1. And it wants us to make sure we can change this. So this is a nice long view, really long, and you can zoom into any part of this rectangle. So you can change the width or the height of your game. Say you wanted a scrolling shooter game, right? So you wanted to go along. This little white square right here represents what you would see on your monitor screen. And all this is stuff that would be outside the view, but possibly you would have it scroll past, so your view would change as you go through it. And we'll see that in other situations. But right now, it wants us to stay at 640 width by 480 height, and the speed is frames per second. They call it steps per second. We think of it as a movie camera as frames per second. And 30 is 24 is typically a nice speed, but if you want it to roll smoother, you might change it to 60 frames per second. And it's kind of like watching a movie. The more frames you have, the smoother the transition is from one motion to the next motion. But it also causes your computer to run slower because it has to be processing these frames as the game plays, type of thing. So we'll leave it at 30 for now. This is everything we needed to know about doing the rooms. So what we'll do is we'll just click on the OK button, because this is what we want for now. You could always click back on the room. It's still here. Everything's still the way it is. And then we're going to file and save as. What we're going to save as is we're going to save it as our last name, first initial, and then clickball. And I'm going to call it clickball 1 for me because I already have one that's different. So then we'll just we place it wherever we want it to go. I just have it in my documents folder. You might want to put it in your Z drive if you're in my class, instead of your documents folder, so that it'll be in your Z drive no matter what computer you use. So we'll save that there. Next thing we do after we look at the room properties is we are going to add some sprites. So this little guy right here, he's the create a sprite icon. So we click on it and we want to load a sprite, and this is on whatever we used before. So we're under our GameMaker 8.1. We're going to click on the Sprites folder. We could have our Sprite folders anywhere we put it. We could have sprites or images from the internet. We could save it as we can scroll through all our folders on our computer. We can go into our it could be in our pictures, it could be in our documents, could be anywhere that we put it. Mine happens to be right here under my name, and it's in the folder GameMaker 8.1 and then Sprites. And the first thing it wants us to do is go under bouncing balls, and you'll see that it has a variety of balls. And if we were to make a ping pong game, or if we were to make Pong, then or a super breakout, we have all types of images that we can use, JPEG images or pings that we can use. This is a round image, and what it has here is it'll have a white background, which is a square. We don't want that, so we're going to click on the remove the background. And now you can kind of see there's a square around the circle for the pinball. So we want to remove that. All right, for some images we might want to smooth edges or make opaque, but for this one all we want to do is remove the background. And then we hit open, and here it is right here. We actually removed the background. We're going to want to name it, and we're going to name it SPR, capital letters, underscore, capital BALL. All right, so SPR underscore ball. And we hit OK. And now we're going to add another sprite. And we hit load sprite. We'll see that we already have our pinball in here. So we want something different. We want to go in our sprites again. We want to do the maze platform. And we're looking for, you'll see there's all types of images here. We're looking for the wall. So here we have the wall block, and we don't need to remove the background. You'll see that that black outline, it considers it because it's a square shape already. So we don't need to smooth the edges or make opaque or any of that. So we'll just hit OK or open, and then we want to name it SPR underscore WALL. So we have our wall sprite. And we hit OK. We don't have to change any of these for this one or center it. So now what we're going to do is we have our sprites. We want to turn them into objects. And by making them objects, we can add events, different types of events, having them moved by a mouse or moving by key pressing or key releasing, or having them collide, or trigger events, or destroy each other, or create something. And then there's actions involved, having it move or jump or follow a path. All types of actions that can take place. All we're going to do for this is we're going to click on this little list over here, and we see that we have the sprite for the ball, and that brings that in there, and we want to call it object. So we want to turn a sprite, which is really just an image, into something that will interact in our game. So you can see we named it over here object ball, and we want it to be visible. We want to see it, and we're gonna use a solid for things that just kind of stay in place. So like when we make the wall next, we're gonna want the wall to be solid, but we're just gonna leave this blank and make sure that it's visible. Then we'll hit OK. And now we're gonna make another object, and we're gonna bring in our wall. We're gonna call that OBJ underscore WALL. And we're going to make this solid. So that means it's just going to sit there, but it allows our ball to like bounce off it or interact with it. And we want it to be visible. We're going to be able to see it. So we hit OK. All right, so we turned our sprites into objects. Now if we click on our room, we can, okay, let's put this back. So that's, and we have our objects. So we had our backgrounds, we had our settings, and now we have our objects. And here is a tile. All right, so I open this up a little bit. You can see there's other things here. So we can go from the ball. We have the ball object, and we have the wall object. And you'll see that if I click on the ball object, so it's visible, and I click anywhere on this grid, it appears. Same thing now if I click on the wall object and I click anywhere, it appears. Now we want our grid to be about the same size, so if we go back to what this was set as to begin with, 32 by 32, you'll see that that's exactly what the size is. Anywhere I left click, I click the mouse, it appears. Something else though, I can hit shift and I can click and I can drag it, and you can see it fills it in. Oops, keep doing that, zoom, zoom. So it fills it in all the way around like that. So you'll want to do that. And I can delete, I can just click on it and delete. Right click, delete. Right click, delete. Right click, delete. Oops. Right click, delete. Shift, right click. Or I could just hold the shift and then hit the right click. It'll delete it that way too. Just the opposite. So once again, we can zoom in to different sections, or we can zoom out, or we can just hit what the standard is, kind of pull it in like this so it's in a corner like that. Now what you're going to want to do is hit File, Save. Now when we go back to our, we can click on our, we can hit check mark, save that. We can go back to our wall object. You'll notice we have, this is solid and it's visible. And we have our object ball. Okay, so we're going to double click on ball. And now we're going to add an event. We're going to add a create event. So in essence what we're saying is that if the object ball is created, then some action will be performed. And the first one we're going to do is we have the fixed move. We're going to click and drag that over, and we want we want the ball to move. So we want itself. We want this action to take place on itself. We want it to move, and this would be no motion. And these are directions. We can pick all of them. If we pick one, it'll only go in one direction. If we pick two, it'll randomly decide when we start the game if it goes to the top left or to the top right. If we pick these directions, then it'll randomly go in these four directions. If we had picked this, then it would just sit there. That means a stop motion. The speed we have is 0, so it actually won't do anything. But if we do this, this is for every frame or every step, as it's called in GameMaker. It'll move 10 pixels. So if we have it set at 30 steps per second, as it is, 10 times 30 would be 300 pixels for every second of time that takes place. So we're not going to click on relative. We'll leave that blank check. We'll hit OK. All right, and then we can hit OK. And we can just hit OK on that. We don't have to do anything there. And now let's we can test it. Let's hit run and see what happens. So this is at a rate of 10. So you see it just randomly went to the left. If I play it again, it may go in a different direction. So it randomly picked a different direction. Not very interesting, but you can see that we can double click on ball, and then we could double click on this, and we can change the speed to 2. We can change anything. So this would be 2 pixels per step at 30 steps per second would be 120 steps per second. We can hit OK. We can hit OK. Then we could play it. And this would be less than 300, so it should go slower in one of these random directions still. So you can see that goes slower than it did before. So you can see that we can get the ball, double click. We can get the ball moving. You can set different speeds, and we can go in different directions. We could add these directions if we wanted to add all 8 directions, or we can pick just 2 directions, or whatever we wanted. And then we can change the speed, and then hit OK to actually start the motion of the ball. So let's change this back to 10, so it's a little bit faster. Hit OK. Now what we're going to do is we want it to interact with the wall. So we're going to pick our collision event, and we want it to bounce or collide. It's going to collide with the wall. So we have our object ball is going to collide with the wall, and we want it to bounce. Okay, we want the ball to bounce, so we leave that on self, and we want it to bounce not precisely, and we want it to bounce off just solid objects. And then we hit OK, and we hit OK, and let's run it again. So now you can see that we told that the walls were solid objects, so it's bouncing off solid objects. So let's go ahead and file, save. Okay, now that we have the ball bouncing around, let's add some interaction that we can have with this, that a player can have with this ball. So let's go back to our ball object, double click on it, and under the add event, we're gonna select the mouse event. All right, so we click on that, and we're gonna click left press. So on your mouse you have your left button and your right button. Some have a middle button, but when you press the button, this action will take place. If you hit left release, when you click down and then you release the button, then the action will take place. Or the left button means that if you click and hold it down, it'll take place while you're holding it down. So what we want is the left press. So the left press will be just one event as it clicks down, not as it's being held or not as it's being released, but as you press down onto it. So we're going to click the left press. And what we want to happen is, let's look under our score. We're going to use the set score, so let's drag that over there. And we want to add 1 point. We want to add 1 point, and we want it to be relative. That means that it'll start with no points, and then once you click on it, you'll get 1 point. And then if you click on it again, you get 1 point more, and you can get 2, and it continues to add a point to what you already previously had. So then hit OK. Whatever your points were before, it'll keep adding it to there. And why don't we while we test this out, let's change the speed back down to 2. Okay, that way. And I'm going to show you something. So that way it'll stay at 2. It'll be the for every step it'll only go 2 pixels, and there's 30 steps per second. So we'll just be adding that in there. Now if I was to do relative, to here, it would go 2, and then the next step it would go 4, and then the next step it would go 6, and it would continue to accelerate faster and faster and faster. What we want is a constant speed of just 2 pixels per step. We don't want it to accelerate. So we're not going to check relative because we want it to stay 2. At every step it'll just be 2. It won't be adding it to it. Alright, so let's hit OK. And let's hit play. And we want to click on it. See, it's even at 2. You can see we have a score of 1. Oop. Even at a speed of 2, it's kind of hard for me to do. So you can see every time I click on it, the score goes up a little bit. There you go, 4. So it goes up by 1 every time I click on it. And it's a good thing that I lowered the speed to 2 because even at 2 it kind of is difficult for me to do. Anyways, all right. So let's cancel that. So now we have a small game. So what we want to do to make it more interactive is we want to add some sounds to the game, so it's, as we said, more action taking place. So we click on our create a sound, and the first sound we're going to make is going to be a sound capital SND_C. When we click on the ball, it's going to create a sound. And we need to find a sound that we'd like. And so what we want to do is we want to go back to our GameMaker 8. And we went for sprites and the sprites. Now we're going to go to sounds for the sounds we want to add. And what the book asks us to use for this is a cash register sound. So we hit open. So we're going to leave this as normal, and there's a whole bunch of different sound effects we can add to it. We're gonna leave these alone. We could have brought in some background music. We want to leave the volume all the way to the right. We want it to be preloaded so that the sound exists at the start of the game. It's already there, and we're gonna leave it pan right in the middle. So we're gonna hit OK. So that brings in our sound. So our sound is now there. So now under the object ball, we have when we press left, we want under the main we want a play a sound. All right. So when we press left and it's on the ball, we get a score of 1 and a sound plays at the same time. The sound we want is the click sound. It's actually a cash register, but it's a sound that happens when we click on something. And we have an option of true or false with the loop. Now, what loop means is that it plays, you start the sound and it plays over and over and keeps playing. As it gets to the end, it loops over and over and over again. We don't want that to happen. We only want it to play once and then stop. And then if we click on it again, we can do that. So that's what we want. So then we hit OK. And we hit OK, and we hit run so we can test it. And you see that? We get a little cha-ching. Now I got 1 point. I heard 1 cha-ching. I get 1 point. There. So I cha-ching, another point. There. So I get a sound. You can pick any sounds you want for this, but let's add a sound for when it bounces off the walls also. So let's go back, and we want to add a sound. So first thing we want to do is create a sound, and we want to look. What do we got here? We got all kinds of sounds: breaking, cash register, crunchy, door opening, creak, electric, found, gun, laser gun, lever, loose, miss, a laugh, a ring, a squeak, maybe a squeak, wood. So let's do a squeak, and let's call this SND underscore bounce. So this is our bounce sound. Once again, we're going to leave all these just as they are. Hit OK. We go under our object ball. Alright, so we have a collision take place. So when a collision takes place, we want a sound to play. So the sound we're going to want is the bounce sound. Hit OK. And then let's run and see what happens here. So we've got a cash register. So there's our squeak sound. You could find any sounds you want. You might want something better than that. So on page 39 of our book, Introduction to Video Game Design, we're going to add a victory condition. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a condition as to how we can win this game. So we're gonna open our object ball, and under our left pressed, we had just placed our play sound click. We have our score, our relative score. When we left press on top of the ball, we get 1 point. So if we go under our score, we can select test score. And we can set our value to 10 points, and we have a choice of larger than, smaller than, or equal to. So we'll have equal to, since we're going up 1 point by 1 point. We'll hit OK. So this says that we're going to start with 0, and then we have, every time we click it, we get 1 point, 1 point. And then when our score is equal to 10, something's going to happen. And what we want that to be is we want that to be an end to the game. So we're going to come over here and we put end game. Now, the way GameMaker works is we start at the top and we work our way down. So the score has to equal 10 before GameMaker reads the end game script. So we hit OK, and then you can run your game now that you have that. And you can see our score of 1. So what happens is, if you want to take the time to go through this to make sure it works, you click on this 10 times and then your game will end. So we're not going to do that. We have officially created our first level. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a second level. So we're going to duplicate our room. So now we have room 0 and room 1. We want to change the background for our second level. So we're going to create a background. We're going to name it capital BCK underscore level underscore 2. Get rid of that. And then we're going to load a background, and we're going to pick this wood background. And we're going to hit OK. And we're going to go to our room. We're going to select our background, and now we have a new background. We want to change the caption for the room to level 2, and we want to add some difficulty to make level 2 a little bit more difficulty. So there's many things we can do, but we can just do this for now. And then once we're done, we'll just close and save the changes. Now that we've created our next room, let's go back to our object ball and our left press, and this is where we had our end game code, so we're going to delete that, and we're going to go to main 1 tab, and we want our next room. So you can see there's different rooms, there's previous rooms. We want our next room, and we have transition effects, and there's plenty of transition effects, and you could check them all out. But the book's asking us to do fade out and in, and then hit OK. So now when we reach a score of 10, we go to the next room. But instead of trying to catch the ball as it's moving around in the game, we can create a cheat code that only we know about, and we'll do a simple one now where we'll add an event, and we can add a keyboard event, or we can do a key pressed, whichever one you want. We can do key pressed, and we can do a space bar, and when we key press the space bar, we can start the moving. We can have an object and select our object ball, and we can tell it to stop moving. Speed is 0, so we hit OK. And then we can click it 10 times, and that'll get us to the next level. Something else we can do is we can add a second cheat, so we can have either a keyboard or a key press, and we do the another key, so the enter, we'll do the enter key. And we can click that in there and select an object, which is the object ball, and we can reset that to a speed of 5 and going in these random directions that we selected, and we can hit OK. So we can change that, put in that cheat code, and then we can file save, and we can run and test this to see if we can get to our next level. So I can hit the space bar, and that stops it, and then now I want to get to 10, and that faded into the next level, and we can stop it. Now we can see that this continues to go up. So if we had greater than, then it would just stop. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to create a third level and then a fourth level, and we're going to want to make the third level even more difficult, and we're going to want to continue our code to go to the next level, and then we can start a title page and an end page for the game. Now all we have to do is put an end to this game. So let's create a sprite, and let's edit our own sprite, and we want it, let's make it 300 by 100. Okay. Alright, so our image here, we can click on that, and we can zoom in a bit to make that a little bit better. What we're going to do is we want to do draw text, and we want to go on our font. So we want to make sure we select our font to be 20 and make it bold. We can use any font we want. The fonts will show up down here. So let's just go with this one right now. Select the color that you want for your font, and that also shows up right here in the sample. So hit OK, and then we click, and you want to put in the text. You want to put congratulations, and then you put in the hashtag, and that starts the new line. You are a hashtag winner, and then hit OK, and you can see that it's set up right there. You can make sure the font's centered to the right or to the left, any way you want it. You want it all on where the checkerboard is, and you can doesn't make a difference, but you can try and center it as much as you want, and then hit OK. Center that. Hit OK up here, and then hit OK up here, and make sure the name is capital SPR underscore endtext, ENDTEXT, and then hit OK. And then we want to create an object. Create an object for our endtext sprite. We'll call that obj underscore endtext. So we have an object and text. We hit OK. All right, so we want to create a new room. This will be our last room, and this should be room number 3. We have our object endtext, and we can place it where we want it. So that looks good. If you don't want it there, delete it and move it over to the center a little bit. Then hit OK. And something we want to do here was in our settings, we want this to be room 3, and you can call it the end. That's okay. Now we want to bring in a couple buttons. So we have a sprite, and we load our sprite, and we want to get the quit button, and just hit open. We call this SPR underscore quit. Then we hit OK, and then we want to do our play button, open. We'll call this SPR underscore play, and then we hit OK. All right, so for our object ball, we already had our press enter and our press spacebar of our cheat code. So we want to make sure we got this set up. So we start with a score of 1, and we move that score up, and we play a sound when it clicks. And if it gets to 10, you go to the next room, and if it gets to 20, you go to the next room. So this is level 2, this is level 3, and if it gets to 30, it goes to the next room, which is our room 3, which is our end. So we make sure we have that all written there. And then hit OK, and then we have our sprites, and we want to bring in our quit sprite. We call this obj underscore quit, and we want to add an event that when we left press on the button that our game ends. All right. So we go, okay, that's fine. And then we want to create a sprite with our play. And we want this to be obj underscore play. And we want an event that when we left press on the mouse, that first of all we're going to play again. So what we want to do is we want to set the score to 0. So if we're going to start over the game, we want to start with the score at 0. And then we're going to go to a different room, and that different room we're going to go to is room 0, where we want to start over. And we just pick any transition we want. We'll stick with our fade out and OK. And then we hit OK. And then for room 3, we go back to room 3 and we say, okay, we want to put our play button, say, right there. And we want to put our quit button right around there. So we quit and play. And then we hit OK. And file save. So now we have our full game. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Goes to the next level. It's cheap. Spacebar. 20. I made this level difficult. You can do anything you want here, but I just added 3. And then if you want to quit, the game ends. If you want to play, you see our score went back to 0. So the codes will continue to loop through the game. So that's our game. You follow along in the book. All you have left to do is to create yourself a title page, which you can follow the directions and do that yourself. Compile to an executable. And then you're going to go beyond. So you're going to add a second ball to the game, different one, like the basketball or the soccer ball. You're going to add enemies to the game, coding it yourself, learning how to code it. You're going to program the ball objects to bounce when colliding with the enemy objects. And you're going to rename all the rooms in order of title, level 1, level 2, level 3, and winner. To rename a room, it tells you how to do that. So you're going to create all of this yourself, as it says in the book, and then you're going to finish up the games, and then you will be done with lesson 3.